You're aware of the internet disruption that happened a few weeks ago, precisely that started March 14. And as a result of that, businesses has been thrown into confusion. Many Nigerians are wondering what actually happened. The information in this happened as a result of the cut in submarine cables. What has been the impact of these on businesses and many telecoms operators who are largely affected by this development? Let's hear what our guest will have to say about this. He's an expert. We're being joined by Ayowande Adalemo. Okay, sorry, Adalemo. Okay, please pardon me for that. We're being joined by Ayowande Adalemo, who is the founder and CEO with 5 Wireless. Glad to have you join us this morning.
It's a pleasure being here.
Sorry about that. The mix-up about your name, so sorry about that.
Yeah, so a lot of people get it wrong. It's Adalemo.
Adalemo.
Yeah, it's actually a nickname that became a surname.
Okay, great.
So if you're very familiar with Yorubas, you hear Adalemo Fogun Loto.
Yeah.
So it's a nickname that became a surname.
Oh, great. That's fantastic. It's good to know you're familiar with your root. Great. So let's start with this story.
Yeah.
Many Nigerians are wondering, what actually happened, because when you talk about the cut in submarine cables, for people who are not experts like you, for them to understand, I would like you to provide a background and explanation for them to understand what actually happened, where it happened somewhere in the region of Côte d'Ivoire and it affected the part of West Africa and also Nigeria. Give us, as an expert, break it down for Nigerians to understand what happened.
So first of all, we need to understand that most of the data we consume are in data centers all over Europe and the US. We are just beginning to build our own capacities here, so we don't have that kind of capacity. Before the advent of the undersea cables, what we used to have are VSAT satellites. So what that means is that someone somewhere in Europe sells internet capacity to us in Nigeria to access their services. But with, I think the first cable that we had here was called SAT3. I mean, it's under the NECOM house itself. That cable runs through West Africa, South Africa, all the way to Souq in Portugal. Connects to Portugal and data center, and then from Portugal all to the telehouse in London, so that I can now get on the internet here and travel faster transmission all the way to the telehouse in London, and the telehouse in London is connected to the Hong Kong exchange connected to China exchange, like that. And then thereafter, one cable came in. Now, these cables are fiber optic cables that take, one has over 7 terabytes of data per second coming into Nigeria. I think it's the largest cable landing system that landed here. Now, because it's a new technology in this part of the world, the charting of the ocean routes for ship conflicts severally with the undersea cables. It's not just Africa. It's also happened in Asia. It happened in the Pacific Ocean. Sometimes when ships are approaching the berthing stations, they drop their anchor. I mean, you know how heavy anchor is. The anchor now sometimes hits the submarine cable, drags it, and then breaks it. And that is exactly what happened in this instance. A ship dropped an anchor, and then the cable break. But unfortunately for us, that appears to be almost like a convergence point between East Africa, West Africa, and the cable that goes all the way to South Africa, Ghana, and then to Souq. One is a major part of that consortium, and some other consortiums as well, so which is why we suffered that in Nigeria.
All right, so now that the damage happened, what has been the measures to ensure that it's fixed? And we understand that for quite some while now, internet connection has been gradually restored, but not to the extent it used to be. Calls also were affected, and so even banking services were affected. What has been the activity leading to recovery? So
first of all, there's a reciprocal agreement amongst the providers, the undersea cable providers. We have about 7 of them in Nigeria. I don't want to mention their names. We have about 7 of them in Nigeria. So they usually have reciprocal agreements for instances like this. And so I would now take capacity from you and take capacity from the other ones, and then I can now serve. So that's the first point of restoration, so that customers can get on with their lives and service can be restored. The second point is identifying what really happened, was it an attack or an accident? That needs to be farmed out. And because these cables are also they also carry electricity, so it's a very dangerous thing. It takes a while for them to fix it. And once the cable is cut, we say the cable is short. So we need to find newer cables, we need to now reconnect them. It takes a couple of weeks before that is done. That will be done by the provider, and so they take a ship and the Cape divers, they take frogmen on the who now repair that part that was cut. That takes a lot of time. But initially what happens is that they take capacity from other undersea cable providers who are also in Nigeria.
Now, there are those who argue that why relying on the undersea cables alone, can't we deploy satellite into this? If that sounds like argument from a layman, maybe you pardon the layman, but what's your own take on that?
So satellite technology is a very limiting technology. Number one, you have to travel 23,000 miles into space. So there's something we call latency, the time it takes for you to send data into space and back. Whether it's Starlink or whatever you call them, you receive them with VSAT, right? They're all very small aperture terminals. Now, the interesting thing is all of the satellite systems you have in the world that delivers internet access are powered by fiber at some point. So in Nigeria, as an example, the NITCOMSAT is powered by main one. So the Earth station is powered by main one. So the fiber goes in there, and then it is now distributed around Nigeria. So satellite is not an option. It's not even a fallback solution. What we need to do is, one, increase our terrestrial capacity. Two, ensure that our services, our local services, are hosted here at our co-location centers, either the one at 21st Century, Min 1, or the rest of them. We need to host locally. All our banking software, we need to host locally. We need to ensure that if building a cloud service provision is a lot of money, I don't think the federal government should be putting money into cloud hosting at this moment. But bring the cloud hosts, the Amazons, the Googles, the Ocean One, the Digital Oceans, bring them here, give them incentives to host their cloud here, so we don't have to travel over there to access their services when we can have it here and people can pay in Naira. That way, if there's an undersea cable cut, the impact is minimized on Nigerian businesses.
So what will be the role of the NCC, NatComSat, and even other government bodies to this end, hosting, like you said, locally, the internet solutions? So
the NCC, the NITDA, well, I don't think NCC has a lot of role to play because that's satellite. But the NCC, NITDA, and those who are involved in policy making already have a solution. There's an internet exchange point in Nigeria, and not just one. It is now enforcing the policy, ensuring that every single internet service provider, every single mobile network service operator, every single co-location service are at the exchange point, and that we have reciprocal agreement amongst ourselves. That's pretty very important, and that's the problem we have. Not everyone is on the internet exchange point. If everybody was there, and then we can put our cloud services on the internet exchange points, all services are routed locally. It is only essential services that now go international, which is where we're now impacted. Most of our services are going international, which is why this impact was felt by businesses.
Why are the services going international? Is it because the providers are international companies?
No. So I mentioned cloud service providers now. So even if you have a local, so I run a local ISP, right? But most of our software that we use is hosted on Azure. Azure is owned by Microsoft, or is owned on Google Cloud or Amazon Web Services. South Africa has, most of these cloud service providers have their hosting facilities in South Africa. We don't have any in Nigeria. The best we have are mirrors, like caching points in Nigeria. So we need to travel there and even consume our own services hosted outside. That's the problem we have.
How did we get to that situation where we are not even thinking in that direction, to localize some of this? I know it could be very expensive, it could take time, but the journey will start from somewhere. So what should be the starting point for Nigeria?
So I don't think it's a problem in itself, if not for the impact. It's almost like, do we have competitive advantage? If I put a cloud service, which I said there was incentives for them to come here. Do I have the competitive advantage to put a cloud service offering in Nigeria? How many businesses can take that on? We've not even baked a bigger pie. Is it the civil service you want to get on board cloud services? Is it government? Government is the biggest business anywhere in the world anyway. But the way our own government runs, we see that it is almost difficult to say all government services run in with this cloud provider. So it is cheaper for me to actually host abroad, which is not a problem. The question is, where is my competitive advantage if I want to host locally? Electricity is a challenge. Co-location services are very high and expensive. So I'd rather host somewhere where I can have 1 terabyte of internet access for $50 or $500 as against 1 megabit of internet access that is same $50 locally. So the competitive advantage is there. The question is, what are we building that we can now offer the world from here? Even if I'm hosting it there, which is an advantage for me, what am I building that the world can consume from there? That's the most important question.
So as it is now, how has that impacted on the quality of internet services in Nigeria and around Africa, even before the cable cuts?
Before the cable cut, it was fine. I mean, 7 undersea cables in Nigeria alone. I think there were 2 in Ghana. Cote d'Ivoire has 1. The East African region has about 3 or 4, right? So the quality of internet access was great.
Would you say it's as great as what is obtainable in other clients, let's say in the West?
So that question, it can be, as an example, I think the largest carrier has been one that they have up to 10 terabytes per second. That's enough to ensure that about 100 million Nigerians are watching HD level streaming for almost 3 or 4 years. So that's the kind of capacity that only main one has. We're not talking of Glo, we're not talking of AAC, we're not talking of all of the rest of Google has landed, Facebook is also landing one, Sat3 is there. So we're not talking of, if you look at the combined capacity we have, it's well over 30 terabytes per second. That's not the challenge. The challenge is in our terrestrial distribution capacity. We don't have that capacity to deliver to what we call the last mile, to the common man. Let the common man be able to access internet access at speeds comparable to his colleague anywhere else in the world. Ghana is even doing better than we are doing. We are way behind, and it's an infrastructural challenge. It is not a function of the undersea cables. The undersea cables are great, but we have infrastructural challenges locally. That's a problem we have.
Now, the scenario that played out about this submarine cables, what are the lessons from it? Because if things happen like this, you expect that the lessons will be learned, and then this will inform or help planning for the future. So what are the lessons for the service providers, for Nigeria, and also for businesses? Or what are the backup plans that could mitigate against this kind of development if it happens?
There's very little that businesses can do because we are consumers. You can't overspend and overspec yourself for this sort of situation. So I think it falls largely in the Ministry of Digital Economy and Innovation. What Bosun is doing now, Dr. Bosun is doing now, is what needs to be done. There needs to be a regional approach to protecting these undersea cables. We need to rechart the ocean routes for ship, taking into cognizance that we have undersea cables. So what are the new routes that can be charted, or what are the new technologies and sensors that can be on ships? And I can also tell the data centers that there's a ship approaching and the master is involved. So the master needs to be involved, the Navy needs to be involved, NCC needs to be involved, BIDA needs to be involved, so that when a ship is approaching and it's getting close to another sea cable, whether it's dropping its anchor or not, signals are sent and we can radio that ship to tell the ship, you are very close to another sea cable system. But it has to be regional. I dare say even international, which is why the minister, the honorable minister, has gone to the International Telecommunication Union and having a meeting with them to say, let's begin to protect these undersea cables. It affects everyone everywhere in the world. So it's a government thing. This is where the government now needs to play their part. Businesses, there's very little they can do, except you now begin to have 3 or 4 or 5 providers, which is over-speccing. The best solution is for the businesses to protect those undersea cables and then ensure that everybody has not just reciprocal agreements on paper, reciprocal agreements technology-wise, so that the routers are really talking to each other. So that if there's a downtime, it is automated, not the length of time it took for us to now cut over to other providers.
What will be the challenge, or what has been the challenge in having that synergy in terms of the technology and even honoring agreements? You're talking about having a regional agreement to rerouting the sea, the sea route. But do you think that's going to be easy to achieve, even regionally, let's talk about internationally?
Again, most of these landing cables are private companies. They're private corporations. They understand the importance of reciprocal agreements. But government also now needs to sit down and ensure that there's integration. Competition comes into play. So I don't want to play with you, but I want to play with this person. Which is why the government needs to come up with a policy that says everybody must have these agreements with each other for this level of service provision when it's a force majeure like we saw. Beyond that, and then it's left to competition. Because I like to protect my business. If I was an undersea cable provider, if I buy capacity from you and I see that it's profitable, what stops me from cutting your undersea cable every time? So the government must come in and put all of things in place to ensure that not one person has the advantage over the other person. Again, government is now, every single country has their own policies. So you have to now meet with the ministers of each of those countries, and everybody has to agree on how much impact does this have on me. Some countries are not back up as we speak. Nigeria is even very lucky. We're back up, right? Some other countries are not back up. I don't think Ghana is still struggling. Cote d'Ivoire is still struggling. Kenya is still like this struggling. So governments need to understand that this has a huge impact on revenues. We've lost billions of naira in just a couple of days. How do we forestall this? A lot of banking apps didn't work. You know what I would do to healthcare, what I would do to feeding, especially now that inflation is galloping, food inflation is galloping at 40 degrees, and I can't even pay to get food because my banking apps are not working. What happens to wages? When we look at all of this and the impacts, and we can now measure the impact in terms of money lost, man-hour lost, time lost, then the government will realize that this is the value of this property, these assets we have under the sea. And because of the value, this is how we want to protect them.
All right, let's expand this conversation by looking at internet services in Nigeria generally. There have been complaints about downtime, poor services and all that. The conversation now is around 5G. So where are we, and what are the factors responsible for these poor services? What are the shortfalls, and what are the areas that improvement should be looking at improving those areas?
First of all, 5G is not it's for the top of the pyramid. It's not for the bottom of the pyramid at all. You need a high-end phone to be able to access 5G network. So it's an elite network. It's not something that is for the masses. And that has been a bane of our problem in Nigeria. We focus on the top of the pyramid, maybe the middle of the pyramid sometimes, businesses and high net worth individuals, or individuals that can afford to buy my modem. So the infrastructure we deploy is infrastructure that allows me to serve that part of the market. That infrastructure is limiting, and because consumers are inundated with new services, new software, new apps every single day. If you talk about the TikToks and the YouTubes and the rest of them, people that actually just sit on YouTube and TikToks every single day, you will realize that the infrastructure cannot take this. Meanwhile, expanding this infrastructure, you have to go back to the NCC to get more license for frequency. You have to do fiber optic cabling, and if you do fiber optic cabling, you have to deal with the boys on the streets. And dealing with the boys on the streets, you have to deal with sabotage. They cut your cable. The man who is looking for iron condemn is going on the street and just sees your cable, just pulls your cable out. He doesn't care. There's no protection for those kind of infrastructure in Nigeria. There's no emergency that's been declared to say this is national assets, regardless of who puts it on the ground. There's even no coordination for those kind of assets put on the ground. So I'm digging my cable and I realize that, oh, someone's cable is here. I was passing through Jota the other day and I saw my own cable outside. Someone had dug and got out my own cable while putting his own cable in the ground as well. We don't have a ducting system, a general ducting system that works. Lagos State is trying something, but it really doesn't work. How much more a national ducting system that protects that infrastructure? We don't have enough base stations around because these things are expensive. And hey, if I was a service provider, the first question I ask myself is, where is my money coming from? Let me just stay in Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, instead of doing the whole of Nigeria where people can afford, the economies of scale is not there to afford those services. So what we need to do is move away from the marketed technologies for 5G, 4G. These are technologies that the West is marketing to us. I begin to look at what technologies are available and affordable for millions of people to use that will not impact on infrastructure, that is simple to deploy and everybody can access. That's the kind of thing that the government needs to start looking at now.
Let's look at internet access. Yes, we know that internet penetration in Nigeria is fast growing, but what is the level of access? It's still expensive trying to buy data and have internet access. In other climes, you have public Wi-Fi services, but in this part of the world, how much of that do we have and how safe is it?
We've had a number of attempts at public Wi-Fi in Nigeria. I mean, I'm involved with two. This is my second attempt at ensuring there's pervasive public Wi-Fi in Nigeria. Public Wi-Fi is usually not safe. Usually, because a number of times those who put up public Wi-Fi just want to either want it to come to their shops, or it's something, a rogue Wi-Fi network that you find and it's not protected. For public Wi-Fi to work on a mass market level, you have to ensure that it is secure. So what we are doing in my company, as an example, is that for the public Wi-Fi, you create your own account. And so you are within a protected, secure network. And then we have a number of technologies that we've also put in place to ensure that nobody can sniff the Wi-Fi signals and see what you get, what you're doing, get your data. So it's protected. And we're following the NDPR standards to ensure that the user data is protected. And now, because of the new CBN rules, everyone on our network needs a wallet. And so for you to get a wallet, you need your name. So that even further protects, it further personalizes your Wi-Fi network. Also, until you share your OTP with someone before you can use it. But yes, if you're using public Wi-Fi or any internet access, for that example, you have to be careful about what sites you visit, where you go, who you share your credentials with. Because whatever you do on the public internet, you're on your own. You have an antivirus, you have malware systems that protect you. If you don't have that, you can't blame the Wi-Fi network for whatever you see. So whether you're on the Wi-Fi network or not, once you're on the public internet, once you're on the internet, you're really on your own if you don't protect your own systems.
Talking about provision of public Wi-Fi, it appears the service providers are doing more than necessary in this climb. So what kind of incentives can be put in place to encourage investors or companies who want to invest in these for them to succeed and then do well in this kind of arrangement? To do well in this kind of arrangement, you need incentives around infrastructure. Right of way is a major impediment. You want to put your fiber, because of course to provide public Wi-Fi you need fiber optics. You want to put your fiber on the ground, you need right of way. Right of way in Lagos is expensive. I think Kaduna and Ekiti are the only states that have said, you know what, right of way for us, Kaduna is free. I think Ekiti is 145 naira per meter, which is cheaper than what you find everywhere else. So right of way, that's the first thing that needs to be done. The second is that we need to find a way to get, so we're talking of internet. How many people can actually access this internet when it becomes very available? Total number of smartphones we have in Nigeria today is less than 30% of the total number of phones we have. And that's a challenge. How can we get devices into the hands of people, especially in rural communities? Because when they have devices, then they can begin to think of businesses, they can begin to communicate, they can partake in the digital economy. If we don't have that, so there needs to be an incentive on ensuring that the cost of devices is lowered to a point where just anyone can afford it, or some kind of credit systems like the president has always been talking about that allows rural farmers, rural people, people in secondary schools to access devices that they can use to learn, to trade, to do commerce.
All right, so let's talk about the costs of the internet. Why is it still expensive to have access to data and to make use of internet in Nigeria?
Again, it boils down to infrastructure. When I say infrastructure, virtually every single base station you see, and I'm talking about the 4G and 5G networks and 3G, is powered by diesel. Electricity is unstable, so you have to power by diesel, or you have to do extensive solar installations. So like we use solar panels for all of our installations, and we're just a small ISP, right? We're not as big as the MNOs. So if you look at the cost of diesel and the cost of maintenance and running all of this, vis-a-vis the quality of disposable income we have, what is competing for the users, for that user's disposable income, you realize that you need to price yourself at a level where everyone can survive. Otherwise, we won't survive. And I will not agree that we need another subsidy regime for data. No. I think what we need to do is to bring in the thinking of scale. Like we are doing at our own company, we're thinking, can we build infrastructure that can scale, that can take millions of people? If I can take millions of people on board, then I can spread the cost and then it can lower the cost significantly. Most of the initial infrastructure built by the MNOs was for voice, and then started layering data on it. That's expensive. And they need to recoup back their investment. So we really can't blame them, except you want them to die. That's where, so it will still be expensive for a while, but the more we scale, the better it becomes for Nigerians.
So is that the challenge of the small internet service providers versus the large ones? What you just described?
It's a technology challenge. Most of the providers we have follow the Western technology, and there's always that bandwagon effect. So there's WiMAX, and everybody ran after WiMAX. Remember, there was WiMAX, and everybody was shouting WiMAX at the point. Then the LTE came, the long-term evolution of the CDMA variant came, and everybody's on to LTE, and now we have the 5G. However, there's a technology on every device you have here, which is Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi has its limitations, doesn't travel very far, maximum 200 meters. It doesn't, it has a high capacity, but it's susceptible to interference a lot. So if I open my microwave oven, my Wi-Fi is affected. If someone revs their engine outdoor, technology has grown to ensure that we minimize those impacts, but Wi-Fi is still not it's not a clean technology to use. However, if you design it properly in such a way that it mimics microcells, then you can have thousands of Wi-Fi hotspots all over the city that you can now give to people who cannot afford the high cost of 1 gig or 2 gig. And that's what we are doing. We're trying to ensure that we have Wi-Fi virtually on every street light in Lagos, so people can have access to free internet. What that does to the mobile network operators is that they can now offload their data on us. So you buy 1 gig from a mobile network operator as an example, but you have free Wi-Fi on us in partnership with them. So that makes the cost significantly lower. So I know that the moment I connect to a hotspot, my SIM changes to the Wi-Fi. It saves me my data. When I get back inside my house, I continue to use the MNOs network. There needs to be that kind of collaboration with ISPs and the MNOs. But a lot of thinking is innovation. You have to innovate around it. If we don't innovate and just following the bandwagon like we do, we're still going to have the same story.
Looking at the Nigerian telecom industry, is dominated by the big three. You know them, so I don't want to mention their names because we're not paid. All right, but is there opportunity for new service providers? Is there prospect for them? And why are we not having new service providers?
There is an opportunity. I mean, I'm new. Wi-Fi wireless just like we just got licensed.
But looking at the competition, what's the level of survival?
So we don't even have competition in the telecom space in Nigeria. We don't have competition. We simply have a price war, not competition. Competition will come when there's innovation. We don't have innovation. Nobody's really innovating for the bottom of the pyramid. So what do I mean by that? I was having a conversation with the Commissioner for Agriculture. Look at what they're doing in Lagos. The Onje that is going on around. But it's been chaotic because you know how Nigerians are. Food is 25% off, everybody rushes there, there's no organization, numbers are written on paper. What if we provide internet access there for the merchants? I don't have to go there. I can stay back at home online, connect to the internet, order my own JCO, pay my money online, 25% off. Logistics company picks it and delivers to me. We need to begin to innovate around the use cases for internet access. If we don't innovate around use cases, we could be doing the same price war, and we say, oh, there's competition, oh, it's saturated. No, I don't think so. Imagine the other day we saw Benue with mangoes rotting away in Benue. A digital system will have solved that problem. So in the farms, I have sensors that are connected to broadband. The sensors tell me when the mangoes will be ripe, when they'll be ready for harvesting. The harvesting company gets the notification, and there's already an agreement to harvest this number of tons of mango. The processing companies understand that I will get mangoes from this place. I want this species, I want this quality. The quality company like Sun and the rest of them in that space understand that once this transport company picks it and drops it, we can test for quality. It goes to the processing company, it's processed into juice or whatever, and the marketing company takes it and takes it off. All these on the digital value chain. But do farmers have access to this? So there's still a huge market for internet access. There's a huge need. So the competition we see is just price wars. I price myself at 500 per gig. Oh, I will do 499. Oh, I will do 498. And then we'll price ourselves so low that nobody can go beyond that band anymore. We need to leave the price wars and begin to offer consumers innovation.
Talking about offering innovation, we have lots of tech companies, even tech startups. So what is the disconnect between what the tech companies are doing and providing local solutions to local problems?
Oh, we're just slaves to Silicon Valley. That's the answer. We're just copying what is in Silicon Valley and slapping it in Nigeria and thinking it will work. Nigeria is largely peasantry. I will do my small thing, he will do his small thing, you do your small thing. Nobody's thinking at scale. To solve Nigeria's problem with technology, you need to think at scale. You need to think really at scale. But if you bring a technology from Silicon Valley and I just want to develop an app, I am tired of hearing I'm developing an app. Interestingly, I'm also a director at Founder Institute, where we train as entrepreneurs. The solutions is not an app. The solution to Nigeria's problem is not an app. It is technology, but maybe back-end technology. And then front end is run the way we run it, but technology now ensures that the processes are easier. So you see a lot of tech companies here, but we're just slapping Silicon Valley technology on Nigeria, making a lot of noise about it, raising a lot of money, but very little outcomes, because we're not solving the problem for the everyday man. We're not critically looking at. I'll use an example. Let's say, so after Jumia Foods left the market and they wound down, a new guy came on board. I don't want to mention his name because he has not paid to, but I like him. Right? And he's a Nigerian. I mean, once he's a Nigerian, I am wholly in support of a Nigerian company doing businesses here. And he innovates around how to deliver food. You see young 18, 19-year-olds riding bicycles and delivering food to you. So he aggregates restaurants in communities, and then the young guy can go with a bicycle. You don't need a bike, so you're not paying for fuel, you're not buying diesel, you're not repairing the bike. You're simply just ensuring that you're employing thousands of young people who are young school leavers who will not get into universities possibly next 2, 3, 4 years, but they're earning good money. That is how to think. So there's an app, yes. But if you look at that business, the app is the least part of that. The app just brings convenience to ordering. The business itself is aggregating helpers, runners, who have bicycles and can deliver. Our tech guys, tech bros, as they call themselves, need to move away from the Silicon Valley idea and try to be like a Zuckerberg, to really thinking, how can I deliver amala to the person that needs it there in a way that will not change the way I want the amala to be delivered? That's how we need to think. How do I ensure that we take our competitive advantages to the world? Not just an app that does what the other app is doing, another app that does what the 1,000th app is already doing, which is why you don't find that growth and that synergy between results and the plethora of tech companies we have in Nigeria.
All right, let's make reference to this issue of mobile number portability. At the point NCC was preaching the gospel of this mobile number portability, what actually went wrong? Was it more like a lip service?
No, it's more like the devil is in the details. So you think that this service provider has a problem and you want to port to this other one, and then you port and you realize that where you were coming from was a lot better than where you are now, and then you port to the other one. It's just a function of the service level that was provided. So people just got tired of it. Why not stay with the devil you know? And instead of porting, let me just get another SIM from this guy so that when this is down, I can. So there are certain things that probably will never work in Nigeria. Mobile money will not take off because everybody has an app and there's USSD. It wouldn't take off like we saw the M-Pesa in Kenya. It wouldn't. Mobile portability will not take off because you don't have, maybe now that we have mobile virtual network operators that have been licensed, maybe we'll begin to see differentiated services and better offerings. But before then, it's the same kind of service offering. I'm putting fiber on the ground, my fiber is cut, my service is down, and I'm ported to you. I'm back to square one. In fact, some people ported today and they experienced outages for weeks on end. And like, why did I just port? So instead of porting, what we will see is that people take several SIM cards from different providers just to be safe. And that's what we'll see. So nothing happened. It's a brilliant idea. Technology is there, but the behavior behind the use of technology, again, technology is not, it's just a tool. It's not a thing in itself. What is the human behavior? How do people consume this service? If they don't consume the service, technology will just sit down there.
So let's wrap up with protecting the cables, whether they're undersea cable or they're the ones under the ground. Let's even look at the ones under the ground. You made mention that right of way is expensive in Nigeria. So if the companies are paying for rights of way to have their cables underground, what should be done to protect these cables? And even when the cables are underlaid, should there be some sort of signal or some sort of labeling along that route to let people know that there are cables here? Because sometimes you find maybe it's even road constructions, they are digging, and sometimes you do not know that there are cables under there. They just extract them and they pull them out. What can be done?
We need to put a structure behind, like I said, there needs to be a national ducting plan. Whether the government builds a duct or not, there needs to be a national ducting plan. There needs to be, these are the routes of ducting. If you want to dig yours, these are the routes for ducting. If the government doesn't have the money, we are a poor country now. But if you want to do yours, this is the route. And every state should adopt that and say, these are our routes. Lagos State tried something. Unfortunately, I think the guy handling it is not handling it properly, right? Where you have a duct and everybody can go into that duct. That will solve the problem. Then we need to enforce laws in this country. Someone cuts my cable and I catch him and everybody around is begging to say, sorry now, sorry, let him go, he's poor. No, he needs to go to jail. That's a critical national infrastructure that he has just damaged. They need to enforce laws. We need to declare all of our critical telecom infrastructure, because we are in a digital economy now. We need to declare them as national assets, regardless of who owns it, and then enforce laws. So vandalism needs to be dealt with seriously. In terms of technology that can be used for monitoring, except we have cameras like Lagos State is doing all over the place, there really is very little you can do to underground cables. Sensors may work, but that just increases the cost of deploying these things. And that's why you find out that most times people just manage what happens. So you pay street boys to do security for you, you pay security in turn, and then you also now monitor yourself. That's the way we deal with it now. Otherwise, the government needs to step in and start saying these are critical infrastructure and nothing must happen to it. Yes, there's labeling along the lines where you see what we call manholes, and the labels to say this is a manhole. Everybody has their label. The challenge is... But
sometimes the interpretation of manhole around here is, oh, maybe there's a drain. It leads to a drain somewhere.
So sometimes it leads to a drain, sometimes it is critical infrastructure. Regardless of what it is, people steal manhole covers. Something needs to be done to ensure that it's either quickly replaced or we find a solution to that challenge, that human behavioral challenge. We need to find a solution to it very, very quickly. Anyone stealing, where are they taking it to? Who is buying it from them? We need to nip that on the bud.
Thank you so much, Ayowande Adalemo. I got it right.
Yeah, you got it right.
Okay, I should give myself thumbs up. Yes, we've been talking with him. He's the founder and CEO Wave 5 Wireless, and we've been looking at the course of the undersea cable cut that has affected internet telecommunication, and of course e-transactions across some parts of Africa, Nigeria inclusive. And then this is our appeal. I think the government should do more to protect, like he said, national assets. We all live in a global world. Telecommunication is important, internet is important. Yes, everything that comes along that line is important. You know how we've suffered the short while that there's been interruption in terms of services. So for those who go about digging without knowing what they're digging, some form of permission should be required. And those who buy manholes that have been sold, you're also aiding and abetting that crime. Let's have a change of attitude.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.